Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Speak Up Facebook Live posts we're doing. These videos have been so informative. We've gotten so much really great feedback from them. And so we are at the fourth one. I think we're going to do a limited run of 6. And if you guys tell us you want more, drop something in the chat and let us know you want more. We'll be back with more. We are here to support you parents, inform you parents, stand with you parents, advocate for you parents. And so that is exactly what we are doing today. We are hearing parent voices again here, but in a different light. We are allowing you to speak up and be heard. And so this panel today, we are talking about going back to school. So yeah, we talked with the students. We talked about the social emotional impact that has happened from being in a pandemic. We have talked about what it looks like to go back to school, getting prepared to go back to school, but schools have reopened. Yay! And some of our students are back in school already. And so we're going to talk with some parents about what that experience has been like. There have been some bumps in the road, as you can imagine, with a district this large. But we will be talking about these students returning to school, what the experience has been like, and what we want to see, need to see, would like to see as we continue into this move into reopening. However, there is never a dull moment with LA Unified School District. And this week we got some new news that is superintendent. You hear the sirens behind me because that's what happens when you're not in a studio, a soundproof studio. So forgive those. We had Superintendent Buettner resign. So he is stepping down at the end of his contract. And LA Unified will be on the hunt for a new superintendent. So Speak Up has spoken to parent voices from every board district represented and just got some feedback from parents on what they feel about the superintendent stepping down. You can find the full blog post in the comment section. The blog post was posted to the Speak Up website, but I'm going to read just a few of these for you. They are really, as you can imagine, a full spectrum of thoughts from parents. But I want to read a couple of these to you because they're really good. And I encourage you to drop your own response to it, reaction to it in the chat, in the comments below. And then to go to the website, click on that link and just read what some of the parents have had to say about this. So before we hear from our panel of parents here today about going back to school, we're just going to read a few of these to you about the superintendent stepping down. Tiffany Morrison, an LA Unified parent in BD1 says, I hope his replacement puts students first and stands up to UTLA. I think that's a voice that we've heard before, and I think we all can stand by that. Andre Miller, a parent in BD3, says, I thought Buettner did a commendable job in spite of the tough climate he inherited. As parents and students navigated the pandemic, he attempted to remain proactive and transparent, displaying strong leadership. I'm hoping for a seamless pass of the baton so that what was started as it relates to African-American student achievement continues. Thank you for that, Andre Miller. We have Christina, I think it's Christina Narin in BD4. I am not surprised he's leaving. The strike and pandemic were a lot to take on. I have seen some changes for the better. Facility improvements, electronics for all kids, and his meal sites helped so many families. Oh yeah, the meal sites that went up during the pandemic for families to get their lunches. Gotcha. Going forward, I'd like to see a solid plan to get kids back on track as far as proficiency, a plan that takes into account all kids in all areas. I can definitely stand by that. And then let's just hear one more. Actually, I have two more really good ones here. I'm gonna go with Dr. Powell, a parent in BD1. Superintendent Buettner has the hardest job in the state. He came into this role with opposition on every front, including from me. I wasn't thrilled with his appointment. However, over the years, I have appreciated the superintendent. I think he's done a better job than he will ever get credit for. So while I'm hoping this person will be a person of color, a parent of school-age children with a strong background in education, I am also hoping that they will be welcomed by stakeholders who are truly here to be collaborative and supportive of the work it will take to save this school district. Well, I have another great one, but that one was so good. I'm just going to end on that one. Really good. There's so many voices and thoughts and ideas from parents in that post that went up today. I hope that you will drop your comments about the superintendent stepping down, what you feel about the job he's done, as well as what you're looking forward to. We all have school-age children. We are all in this sort of group effort to get our children back on track, get our district back on track. And so drop your comments. We do want to hear from you. Now, what you're all here for is not to hear from me. I know. So I'm going to welcome my panel of parents. Parents, can you give a good wave? Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're just going to start right into a dialogue about what this week has been. I think some parents started last week. I think we're in week 2 for a couple of parents, but we're just going to jump right in and just talk about what this experience has been like. So before you raise your hand, I'm going to go to Miss Renee Bailey first. And I'm going to ask Renee, you don't have to identify your school, but identify your students' grade, age and grade, and then talk to us about your back to school experience.
Absolutely. So my student is 5 years old and she is a kindergartner, and her back to school experience has been absolutely amazing in so many areas. I can say that my house is now completely quiet at 6 o'clock because she comes home from school at 4, grabs dinner, and she is out by 6 o'clock. I mean, she is having a great time. I've never seen her so excited. She gets up in the morning and she's like, Mom, let's go. She's ready to go to school, and it's funny. She came home yesterday with a book that she, an activity that she did in class. It was just a little picture book where they did like some basic reading, but I told my husband, this is exactly what she needed, being in kindergarten, to do an activity that's tangible, something they can feel, something they can touch, something they can color, read, and experience, because that's how little kids learn. So it's been an absolutely amazing experience for us.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. This is, sign language for clapping, but I'm so happy to hear that. So this was her first school, it's like first day of school experience. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. I'm so elated to hear that, happy to hear that. Tell me about your process of testing, what you had to do to bring her to campus and how that worked out.
So, of course, we had to do the best baseline testing as every other parent at LAUSD. It was a fairly seamless process, for my daughter, again, by this being her first time in school, she thinks this is normal. So, so it actually made the experience kind of easy. So yeah, we did the testing, and then there's the protocols that are in place with the school. So I kind of had to prepare her for that, like the 6 feet distancing, and you have to stand on a certain dot. I prepared her for all those things. But again, I haven't heard any complaints from her because this is her norm. This is her reality. So she won't know it's different until she experiences otherwise.
That is wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Renee. I think I'm going to go next to Raquel.
Hi there. Good morning. Well, good afternoon. Yes, and mine, I have 2 high schoolers. I wish they stay small sometimes, but that's impossible. They're both high schoolers. I have a 9th grader and a senior. Bummer for the senior, right? My house was actually divided into 2. My senior he wants to end the school year at home, but my 9th grader is done with the distance learning. He wants to go back, which we came to some kind of consensus and said we were returning. So we are actually returning. Our new experience will be next week. So we'll see how that goes. But as far as booking the appointments, it was a whole fiasco. 2 weeks ahead, I started ahead of time just to make sure I wasn't going to leave it for the last minute. But I think we were all worried as parents, how was this going to look? It's all out there. Am I afraid? Of course. But if they're older, it's easier for them to keep their masks on and have the distance. But we'll see how that goes. A roller coaster ride. We'll actually see the actual principal has demonstrated a whole leadership of protocols and policies and aligned. So I feel confident about that. We'll just see how that goes next week and out. Other than that.
Thanks for sharing that. Thank you. Lauren, are you ready?
Hi.
Hi, Lauren. Share with us your return to school experience.
Yes, I would happily share it. I apologize ahead of time to anyone watching if I end up in tears. They're already starting. Our experience has been disappointing, to say the least. I have a kindergartner also, and we found out at 9:15 on Monday morning that our kindergartner's teacher, who we love, would not be returning to the campus, and that our kindergartner would be doing Zoom from her classroom for the rest of the year. So obviously that's disappointing, knowing that we have a kindergartner, and much like the other parent said, like, kindergartners really need to be just doing stuff in person, and they need to be learning in person with a teacher who can help them. And it was also disappointing because we do love our teacher, and not having her back. So it's been a bumpy week, as you can imagine. My daughter kind of understands what's going on, but kind of doesn't. So, we're trying to keep it positive for her. But yeah, it was not what I had hoped for.
I hear you, and I'm so sorry that was your experience. Tell me this. Does your daughter do Zoom? Does she go into the classroom and then the teacher Zooms into the classroom?
Yeah, so she has a substitute who monitors, and to be honest, I'm not totally clear yet how much the substitute is doing versus how much the teacher is doing. But the teacher is still Zooming into the class every day. So, so there is still an element of her being on the computer every day, or the screen, I should say.
Got it. And then one more question for you. I'm just trying to understand all that is happening here. And I understand we're all having really vastly different experiences. In the classroom with the teacher, so there is a substitute who manages the classroom, right? And
From
then,
my understanding.
and then so instruction comes from the teacher via Zoom in the classroom.
From my understanding, yeah.
And then does your daughter have option to come in the classroom and do that Zoom, or stay home and do that Zoom, or they've asked all the classroom to come in and then the teacher said she's not coming? I'm just confused on how this whole thing works. And forgive me, I'm trying to understand too.
Yeah, that's okay. So from my understanding, the teacher is Zooming with the class. The substitute is there to help monitor if the kids need to use the restroom, if they need to go, get some water, or anything that children in person need. And then the teacher is doing Zoom, but she also has to Zoom with her other kids who are also online only. So I'm not totally sure how she's managing that. I'm sure that is incredibly challenging for her. But yeah, it to me seems crazy that this is a district-wide policy when it's not good for children, and it's also not good for teachers.
I understand that. I had one more question for you about it. I'm sorry, Miss Lauren. Your experience is very different, so I'm wanting to hear from you what your experience is, because I suspect there are parents who are having all the experiences in this return to school, which I think we could have sort of anticipated a little bit. And so, is there a, any bit of a silver lining in that your daughter gets to see friends and that is good?
Yeah, definitely. Like,
Okay.
she's super excited to go and see friends, and like, she's never met any of these kids before, so I think that's a big plus. But I think on a personal level, which it's really not about me, it's really about my child.
Yeah.
But we had a series of expectations that we had hoped for,
Yeah.
and then we were let down, and that was very disappointing. So, trying to relay what that looks like to a 5-year-old is also not easy. And when we had such short notice, it made it more challenging because, trying to stay positive at home while trying to figure out what is going to be the best thing for our family, whether that means if she's going to do Zoom at school or Zoom at home, like what is the best thing for our family. And so I just wish we would have had a little bit more maybe notice so that
No.
we could make a decision as a family and we could involve our daughter. But by the time we had figured it out, we really felt like this was what we had now.
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry you've had that tough experience. But I just will encourage you to really lean on the social emotional piece that your daughter will get now by going to school, because that has been sorely lacking also. So at least, at the very least, and I know it's not everything, and I know it doesn't make everything better, but at least she will get some interaction with other students, and that is very important to a kindergartner's growth also.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like,
I agree.
I'm sorry you've had that experience with your teacher, but definitely be encouraged by your daughter does get to interact with other students now, and that has to be spirit filling. Let's move on and let me hear from Cynthia.
Hi. First of all, I'm so sorry, Lauren, that you're going through this. Oh, and then especially because we've had a great week, and I think actually, Lauren too, I actually even mentioned to my son who's in 3rd grade about your daughter, and he thought that would be very, very difficult too. So my son's in 3rd grade, and he's at a school where 70% of the 3rd graders decided to return. So his teacher is teaching an AM and a PM cohort in person. So he's doing the PM cohort, which kind of works for us because we've gotten on quite a late schedule, a late wake up schedule since being being home. So I've been dropping him off at 10:30. We've been coordinating with one of his really good friends, and then they go to the before care. And he's in school from 12 to 3. I've been picking him up at 3:30, and it's been awesome. Last night he told me, I love school. And he's always been a school kid. I mean, he's the kid that teachers say, oh, he loves learning. And he did not like learning on Zoom. I mean, he was where I hate school. I had, lost that kid who loved to learn, and I'm already seeing him bounce back. He's fine with the protocols. He's also watched his little sister's in kindergarten. She goes to private school. So he's watched her do the protocols. I mean, he's like, no problem, I can do it. Testing, no problem. So he's doing really well. What I thought was interesting is I consider us a pretty techie family with screens. And his teacher asked him to bring their laptops. And he was upset about that. He was like, why do we need computers? I don't understand. Why can't we just teach like we used to? So luckily, after the first day, he said they barely use the computers. So he was relieved by that. He is just done with Zoom and computers. So
I hear that. Some students are really good on Zoom, and some it is just not for. And unfortunately, you know, we all had to do Zoom for most of the school year, for the past full year, but for most of the school year. So I'm glad to hear that your son has adjusted back to school and is excited about going. Let me ask you this. You have a kindergarten in private school. Did you choose to put your kindergartner in private school this year as opposed to public school because we were in a pandemic? Or was that just a choice that was already made? Like, why is one in private and one in public?
She started at kindergarten at our elementary school, which I love this elementary school. And so what we've learned is we are not a Zoom family. And my daughter right away rejected it. And I thought she had a chance because she saw her brother doing it at the end of the year last year. So, and you know, she likes to emulate him. But we put her on Zoom and it just was tears under the table the first day. So we tried a few days, and then her preschool, which is run by ex-kindergartner teachers, they decided to launch a kindergarten program, and they offered us a spot, and I just couldn't turn it down because I'm really not surprised by how LAUSD has handled this and how long it took them to open. I kind of anticipated that, and we had friends who turned down a spot, but I was like, I just don't have confidence that LAUSD is going to open this year or for anytime soon. So I put her in that the private preschool, and she's been in 5 days a week, full time, since September. And I think that really, you know, I learned a lot about protocols and how well they work. And that's one of the big reasons I started advocating and speaking up for our schools to open, because I had seen it. You know, my daughter went to school every day in December during the surge, and the safety protocols worked. And so I've been fighting for my son I've been wanting this for my son since September too. I just racking my brain. How do I get him into school? He needs to be in school just like her. So that's, you know,
I completely relate to you. I completely understand and completely relate. I have a 7th grader who is just not built for Zoom. And we struggled when we went to Zoom last March. And at the top of this school year, I made the same decision to pull him and to put him in a very, very small private school where he's gone to school 5 days a week since September, all through the surge, everything. And the protocols are in place. But I am also aware that it's a tiny, tiny school as opposed to one of the largest districts in the United States. I know that LA Unified School District is tasked with it's huge. This district is, and being able to get all the protocols in place and all the safety in place for teachers, for students, for families. It looks a little different than it looks in the Midwest. And so I understand that it was not easy for them to get everything in place to be able to reopen schools. But yeah, I totally relate to you because I made that decision for mine. And I was just lucky enough to be able to get him into a small school. I thank you for sharing that. Noelle, hello, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here. So my name is Noelle, and I have a 6-year-old kindergartner. He has an intellectual disability and also autism spectrum disorder. And he is in a special day class with kindergartners through 2nd graders. Like everyone else, we have been enduring Zoom for the last year. And we're really tremendously excited about getting him back into the routine of going to school with his peers and really like embracing that social emotional piece that's been missing. Something that's unique about my son is that he has, oh my goodness, 10 ABA therapy appointments a week, as well as 8 clinic-based and 2 like kind of recreational therapies per week. So in order for to prep us for getting ready to go back to school, it took a lot of work to just clear out his schedule and make it available to go to school from 8:15 to 11:15 with his peers. And he was super excited. We worked on kind of like transitions leading up to it for about a month and a half, and just trying to like break up his routine so that he was kind of feeling a little bit normalized to a different routine every day. And so just like everyone else on Tuesday, we went back to school and he had the best first day. So he had 3 hours with his peers and with his teacher that he really loves. And he came back, he's an emerging oral communicator, and he was saying friends, friends, and also his teacher's name, which is like super special. And so we were really
That is so awesome.
super excited. But everything changed that evening. We got an email from the assistant principal who's in charge of special education stating that Jabril was, oh, sorry, well, that's my son's name. He's famous now, that he was unable to tolerate and that he refused to wear a mask and that he would not be able to return to campus. But there was a waiver program and a medical doctor could fill out the waiver and then we would have a meeting. I was heartbroken because I really felt like we had a year to plan this out. If there was a waiver, I should have already known about it. Of course, my doctor would fill it out. He has severe hypotonia, which is a muscle tone. Wearing a mask is a medical risk, but also with ASD, like many other kids, he has a sensory sensitivity that just won't allow him to wear his mask. And so I sent all the forms to the doctor, got him back signed, and was just pretty upset, but I was looking forward to this next meeting. But later in the evening, I received a phone call from the principal, and she stated that she had been in talks with the director of special education for the district, who has actually written this policy. And unfortunately, that even if my son had the medical waiver completed, he could come back to campus, but would have to sit outside by himself or in an adjacent classroom by himself, and would not be able to have contact with his peers. And so my story is like a story of heartbreak. This is our second time trying to go through kindergarten. Last year we were in due process and he didn't have a classroom placement. And so he was in preschool an extra year. This year's kindergarten year was virtual until now. And after 3 hours in his class with his peers on the campus with his typical peers, he is no longer allowed to attend school. And so that is my heartbreaking story that I would like to share, because I know my son cannot be the only child that isn't tolerating a mask or cannot wear a mask safely. And I just can't understand how this policy is allowed to be in place because it's blatant discrimination. And I'm sorry to go there, but I'm very sad.
No, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry that has been your experience. I'm glad he had a really good first day. And he came home with a really great word, friends. But I'm really, really sorry to hear that. Now, I have asked Lisa to join us today because I gotten wind of your story prior to this. And so I just want to ask Lisa, like, what are the district policies on this and what can be done about this? Because from my understanding, the curriculum has to be accessed by all students. And so the schools and the district has to make accommodations for student needs. Is that correct?
Yes, Angel, that is correct. Now obviously we have a complicated situation where you have issue of a student not being able to tolerate a mask and then public health concerns at play. And we all recognize the need to, public health safety. I'm a strict mask wearer myself. But we have a few issues here. First issue is timely communication, right? If there is this policy, this student's mom should have been apprised of this policy well before school started, so that at the last minute, they weren't told, so that they could have planned in advance. And when I heard of Ms. Scott's story, I immediately contacted her board member and also the Division of Special Ed. And small victory, the policy is now being clearly communicated on the front page of the Special Ed website. So they were very responsive with that. But that brings us to the second point. And the question is this policy permissible at all? So again, I understand the complexity of the situation. We want all kids to wear masks as much as possible. The backstory is the side letter agreement that was recently signed regarding students with disabilities between UTLA and LAUSD simply stated all students must wear a mask. And when I saw that, I was confused because I know that the CDE, the California Department of Education, has made it clear that students who cannot tolerate masks, students with disabilities who have sensory issues or who medically cannot tolerate masks must still be offered in-person services and instruction. So adding on this policy is taking us into a gray area of, is that okay? I do know, and I'm looking further into a recent case that was brought before me, that there was an organizing effort in San Diego Unified about this very issue, and San Diego reversed their blanket policy about face mask wearing. Yes, students should wear face masks as much as possible. Yes, we had to be mindful that other students had to be kept safe and teachers had to be kept safe. But when federal law and state law both say that students with disabilities who cannot be reasonably expected to wear masks, must be guaranteed in-person learning, then we have to figure out a fast, efficient way for these students' needs to be met and for them still to be given the accommodation of not wearing a mask while learning in person.
So,
So stay tuned.
yeah, Lisa, and I have a question on top of that. Well, one, I suspect they're just making up things as they go along because the pandemic hit and there was really no plan in place district-wide or with the government for a pandemic to hit the United States, period. So I suspect that there, were just blanket rules being laid out as we go to sort of figure out reopening of schools. And I get that. And I get like now they've got to really look at these blanket rules and how they really leave out some students. So, but let me ask, since they said he can come to school, but sit outside by himself, are they able at all to say, well, we offered an in-person learning, but this is the in-person learning we've offered? It's not acceptable, but are they able to even say that?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice or legal point of view on this, but common sense would say that probably doesn't hold water. And it's certainly not what LAUSD's policy, which I'm even questioning, is saying. It's one step, it's an extra layer of lack of compliance to both state and federal law. So I don't think so.
Well, Noelle, thank you so much for sharing that. That is a definitely uniquely different story, but I don't think it's unique to this group right here. But I think we needed to hear that story because it cannot be unique district-wide. And so there has to be other parents out there who are experiencing something very, very similar to what you're experiencing. And so thank you for sharing that. And I'm hopeful that speak up as we learn more information about what to do about this. We will offer it on our Facebook page, possibly in blog posts, but we will be looking into this and finding information and ways to address this, because we absolutely believe that all students, no matter what the ability is, deserve the right to be educated and the right to be educated in school. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move now to Marini and then Eve. I haven't forgotten you, Eve. I'm going to move to Marini and then to Eve. And Marina, am I correct? I keep messing up your name. Marini, am I correct in that your son was a part of my student panel?
He was.
Okay. Yay.
Yes, you remember him.
Absolutely. And it rings the bell. I do remember him. And any of you watching this that did not see the student panel, go in our Facebook Live events and find the student panel. It was a fantastic panel of students speaking about their experience during this distance learning pandemic. It was fantastic. Go watch it. Marini.
Yes, firstly, thank you for having me be a part of this panel. And my heart goes out to Noelle, because I also have a child who is a 7-year-old who is medically fragile and would be one of those children who would not be able to attend school in person because he would not be able to wear a mask due to chronic lung disease and needing oxygen and excessive drooling. So I feel for you, and I will be fighting this fight with you every step of the way. But I'm here to talk about my other son, who is a 3rd grader. He's 9 years old. And he is a pretty chill, go with the flow kind of kiddo. And so his school was one of the 60 plus schools that was able to start a week earlier, the week of April 12th. And so his initial start date to return to school as a third grader was supposed to be Wednesday, the 14th. So our snafu happened with the testing previous to starting school. So the COVID testing, there was a little bit of a snag. So my husband is an LAUSD employee. And so we were trying to be most diligent and making sure that our son was tested with plenty of time, within the 7-day window. And so we had him tested 6 days before the start of the school year. And everything went smoothly. My husband took my son to the school where he teaches, and they both got tested. My husband wanted to preemptively prepare for himself going back to school as well. So my husband and my son both got tested. The next day, test came back negative. However, the problem was the test results were only in my husband's name. So my son's name was nowhere on the results. We got 2 test results, 1 name. So that was a little concerning. That was on Friday. So on Monday, my husband tried to call the district to try to get this rectified, was on hold, was not able to get a response. And because my husband is home, working, teaching, he was not able to wait on hold. So ultimately, the day before school comes, I'm starting to get anxious. It's the night before the first day of school, essentially, and we have no clearance yet to go back to school. And so I just kind of suggested to my husband, why don't you go back to the site, take our son, see if we can get it straightened out, because my son, like Cynthia, he's part of the PM cohort. So he would be starting at 12:15. So we're like, let's try to use this morning time to try to get this remedied. They went to the testing site. The person was very nice, but they couldn't figure out where the issue was. Apparently the intake person, the intake specialist, there are about 3 different people when you go to the testing site that you have to go through to get your test done. So they identified that it was that intake person that somehow input the information incorrectly. The person at the testing site sent an email on my husband's behalf to the district, but she said, now I'm not sure if it's going to get through in time, so I recommend you take another test. So my son had to take another test the day before school, and we were advised, just keep checking your email every 30 minutes to see if you get your results coming through. Which we did. So every 30 minutes, I had my son log into his Chromebook to see if his results came in. We had his backpack ready. We had his snacks ready, but we just weren't sure if he was going to be able to go back to school. And we're seeing, we're hearing on Facebook, we're seeing on social media, all of his friends going back to their first day of school. And unfortunately, we did not get the results back in time. So my son missed his first day of school. So that was disappointing. So we let his teacher know. We actually contacted his teacher the day before and let her know that we probably weren't going to be making the first day of school. But the problem was that when you choose a virtual or an in-person cohort, then you have to stay in person. So it's not like you miss school and then you get to go virtual to make up for that. So he was just missing a full day of school. But since my husband and I are both teachers, we're like, you're not going to just chill and stay at home. So we had him do some work. But we got the results like at 2 a.m. that night. So he was able to go back to school that Thursday instead of Wednesday. So he missed the first day of school, but it's been pretty smooth sailing since then. We were just really disappointed that through some, snag with the district. By the way, when my husband did talk to someone at the district, they said, yeah, that happens sometimes. So you're just going to have to retake the test, which is problematic. How do we prevent that from happening? So that was kind of our situation.
It's quite problematic that 2 people can take a test and only one person's name is on both results. That is a little bit of a problem. And that was done at one of the LA Unified facilities, right?
Yes,
Okay.
It was.
Okay, we know mistakes happen. We try to be forgiving.
Yes.
We try to, have a little give, but gotta do better. Oh, wow. Okay. So at least he got to go. Very good. And how was his actual first day back?
His actual first day was good. The teacher informed us that both my son and another classmate had the same issue with test results. And so she was able to pull both of them aside and catch them up with what they missed. There are only 8 students in my son's PM cohort, which is a positive thing. The fewer students, the easier it is for them to social distance. And like I said, my son is pretty easygoing. He would have been fine to stay home, but I think he prefers going in person because he does miss the social interaction. And so it's been going pretty smoothly so far. I think he enjoys going back to school. He comes back really happy and energized, and he gets to wear his new school clothes, and not just,
Well, we know
PJs and
those
raggedy
are
t-shirts.
we do
Yeah.
know new school clothes are important, and some kids are ready to get out of PJs or loungewear.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sorry he had that snafu in testing, but I'm glad he was able to go the next day and didn't have to miss too much.
Yeah.
But that's good to know. If your student is going back to school, this testing may or may not run smoothly. So give yourself some time, because even with having preparation and time, it still may not work out on time. So really, really give yourself time. Know that your test result may come back the same day. It may be the next day. And here's the truth, it could be the day after that. And so be aware of that. Even in my son's school setting, after every break, they have to test before they can come back, and they have to get that negative. And sometimes that negative didn't come before that day back. And so he missed the day. I can tell you one time he missed one day because that test result took 3 days instead of coming back same day or next day. It actually took 3 days. So if you're preparing for your kids to go back, your students to go back, give yourself time for those test results to come back, okay? And know that even with time, you might not be on time. Eve, hi Eve, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Would
Hello.
you share with us what your going back to school experience has been like for your students?
Well, for me, for the most part, it's been positive. In terms of those test results, I can tell you that I booked through the Daily Pass, and I got the results back via email. And when I checked the Daily Pass, it wasn't linked, it wasn't showing up in there. So I was a little concerned about that. This was the day before my daughter, who's in 3rd grade, was supposed to go back. Fortunately, the school just let me show that negative COVID test just because it didn't get linked up that first day. So she was able to go. And she was a little anxious. She was in a Mandarin immersion, and she was barely hanging in there before COVID. And just over Zoom, it got just too difficult. So I switched her over to the Spanish, which she understands better than the Mandarin, and I can help her with. But they were new kids, so it wasn't her same friends. So before going back, she was a little anxious about that. But after the first day she came back, she was happy. I think she made a new friend. And so she's been really happy these past 3 days. Yeah, going 3 days. My son, he's in 5th grade, and they put him in the PM cohort with it was just him and I think one other child. And he was really anxious about that. He didn't want to go back when it was just going to be hit. And then he said, maybe he'll be absent. It'll just be me and the teacher. And I thought that was great because he would get one-on-one tutoring with the teacher for 3 hours. But he kept telling me that I was ruining his life, and he was handing me a piece of paper during my meetings.
Did you tell him that that's your job, to ruin his life and send him to school?
Absolutely. And he had been having a hard time with Zoom. I mean, he would Zoom, but the teachers gave him a lot of worksheets, and he just kind of refused to do any of the work. So I said, no, you need some time without any distractions to focus on your work. And I even gave him the option. I said, if you finish all the work that you're missing, I'll let you go online. But he didn't like that option. And he was just anxious, I think, in general. So yesterday was his first day back, and he came back happy. It was okay. The day was okay. He wasn't nervous anymore. He came back with a application for the after school program because he said some of his friends were in there. And so he wanted to stay for an hour afterwards. So I filled that out for him, and I'm hoping that they'll allow him to attend.
That's awesome. So I've heard a before school program and then an after school program. So these programs are still happening. There's before schools and after schools now.
Yeah, I think it goes all the way from in the morning when they start school all the way until 4. So his cohort goes from 12 to 3. So he would be able to attend, I guess, for an hour afterwards. And I presume I could take him early as well if he were in the program.
That's really good to know, because I'm sure there are some parents out there thinking, oh, if my student is only in school for 3 hours, like this is not going to work with my work day. There's no way I can get there and pick them up or drop them off. So that's good information to know. I didn't even know that. I'm unaware, because you guys know these rules are changing all the time, right? And so I wasn't even aware of that. So if you're out there and you're on the fence about bringing your child back to school because you don't know how you're going to make that work in your day, there's before school and after school that looks probably very similar to how it looked previously. And so you can do your full work day, which I think is what parents are concerned about. How do I do my full work day if my student and my child is only in class for 3 hours? That's got to be a valid concern. So if you're out there and that was holding you from taking your child back to school, don't let it hold you. Contact your school and find out about the before school and after school program, and that may make it work out for you and your family. And I'm sure that also offers more social interaction for your child, which we talk so much about learning loss, and we talk so much about the academic slide that has happened this year, which is very important. However, social emotional well-being is really equally as important, and students have been missing that. So if that is what's holding you back, contact your school and find out about that, because maybe school will work out for your family. So thank you. We've heard from everyone. I'm so ecstatic your students are going back to school and getting in the flow of things, even if it's only one day right now, Eve, but getting in the flow of things. And for the students who have not found their seat yet in the classroom, keep pushing, keep pushing. They will find their seat in the classroom too, because the district has no choice, and you have to speak up on your side. And so we need all these voices out here. Raquel, I had a question for you, because I think this came up in my mind as we were going through this. You have high school, which is different, because is that not Zoom in classroom?
We did do the survey, and yes, they do. They have that option to stay home or to go physically, and our choice was to go physically.
But my question is, when they go physically, are they being taught physically in the classroom, or are they going physically to open the computer and then Zoom for their lessons? Because that part is a little gray for me, and I think for some parents.
Yeah. What they're going to do is that they're going to go ahead and sit in a classroom. I think it's divided into two homerooms since it's high school, 1 and a 2, I believe. And those who are on 1 will stay in the first, second floor. The other ones will stay in the other floor, but they will stay in one room the whole entire day until it's time to go. So they will go to school Monday through Friday, and they will have those who have decided to go physical. They will stay in that one room, and they will Zoom through there. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
You did. And then I have another question, because these are questions that parents want to know. What is happening for lunch? Because that's when you really get to go hang out with your friends. But because they're staying separate, like, what is happening at lunchtime? Can anyone tell me what their student experience?
Yeah, I think what we took from the principal, what they're going to do, they did hire a lot more personnel to do supervision outside during lunchtime. So my understanding from that is that they will have people supervising outside as they all go in one way. To my understanding, they're all walking in one door, getting out for the other, making sure that nobody's there, keeping their distance. And they will grab a lunch, and then again, somebody will supervise that they're all sitting very far apart. We are lucky to have a brand new school, which is a 4-year-old school. And there's a lot of space. We have little picnic tables, we have grass, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. But as a mom, of course, I'm a little concerned. I have my young one, he's very friendly, very social. So I'm afraid that he's the one that's going to be hugging, high five, which is normal. But again, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Again, they're rolling out next week. We'll see more and we hear more from them. But they're very well. One, I guess, like I said before, one is very excited to go back. He's done with homeschooling or being home, and the other one is he's a senior. He says, "Mom, this is it. I'm okay. I got this. I only have a few months to go." But we had to come. I wasn't gonna drive one. I was gonna drive the two. So he agreed. He says, "Okay, we'll try it. Let's see how this goes." And since we do have 2 weeks to try to see if, and then we can go ahead and say, you know what, it's not working for me. Then I can go back and say I'm going back to distance learning.
So is that how the rule goes? You commit to 2 weeks, and then if it doesn't work out, you can switch back to distance?
I don't know if that's a rule, but they did say, it was a comment that came out, you can try it. And if it doesn't work for you, it's easier to go that way versus the other way where you are sitting and saying, you know what, I decided maybe the third day after starting, saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I do want them to go physical. Then I think there is a wait versus going the other way, going to school and then saying that this is not working out for me.
Got it. That makes total sense. Thank you. So I was wondering, you were saying how physical and friendly your son is. I was just wondering when someone's kiddo is going to go to school with their Dora mask on and come home with a Mickey Mouse mask on, because it's bound to happen. Because they're kids. It's bound to happen. But I think the schools are really trying very hard to make sure that distance is kept and students are kept safe and families are kept safe. I think that's really important. Is there anyone else who had a different sort of lunch experience? And what I'm asking about in particular, thank you, Marini, is I want to know, like, are they staying in their classroom and don't leave, or are they actually getting to go really interact with friends in space, but really have that lunchtime? Lunch is like the best part of the day.
So for my third grader, it's not quite the ideal situation, but at least they do get to be outside. From what my son explains, it's like a 15-minute snack time because his cohort is from 12:15 to 3:15. So the assumption is that he's come to school already fed. And so they get like a snack time. And my son was saying that they're sitting on a bench, 2 kids to a bench. So one on one end of the bench, one on the other end of the bench. So they're pretty far apart from each other. They have their snack. But what I found interesting is that he comes home every day with this big bag of food, the LAUSD to go bag. So it's like he gets a plethora. He gets like chicken nuggets and tater tots, like marinara sauce, bananas, drinks, and mini cheeseburgers. And so we it's interesting because they obviously have the surplus of food. And so we just kind of go through the bag at the end of the day. And some of it's like thawing out because it's been frozen. Some of it looks a little suspect and some of it's good. So we kind of go through it. Obviously, I'm glad that that's available for students who need it, but it's just funny. You see the kids walking out with these big plastic bags full of food at the end of the day.
I thank you for that. I think that's fantastic, though, because we know food scarcity was a concern, especially at the top of the pandemic. And we know for sure that many students, the lunch they get at school is maybe the only meal or the biggest meal they get of the day. So I'm so glad to hear, even if the food is frozen, it can thaw out, that they are getting, a good hearty meal to take home. That is really good too. And I'm glad he gets to sit outside with friends. That is such a concern. So you've heard me say it a lot of times in this show about the social emotional piece of it, because I think that we really forget how important that is to our students. We did a program, I think 2 weeks ago, on social emotional well-being of students. If you did not see that one, I'm going to encourage you to go and watch that one also. We had some social emotional development leaders and a social emotional child psychologist on. And so they spoke to the importance of social interaction and what that does for your child too. And that is an important component of this. Theoretically, academically, your child can get caught up, but that social emotional being, or part of their being is really important to be nourished and fed. So if you haven't seen that show, go see that show also. If we haven't heard your questions or heard your experience about going back to school, or your thoughts on the superintendent stepping down and what you're looking forward to, drop those in the comments. Someone from Speak Up will respond to you. If you have ideas on something you really want to hear about that we haven't talked about yet in one of these programs, drop that in the comments. We will be monitoring those comments to see what is important to you, what you want to hear about, what you want to talk about. This show was vastly different than the others because this was not about the advice. This was not about the what to do. This is about lived experience. What did you experience? How was your experience? And maybe what you've heard here will help you in your experience in going back to school. If your child has not been back to school yet, if your child has, it relates to one of these obstacles in getting back in the classroom, maybe you've heard something here that will help you, or maybe you've learned something else with your student that would help. Drop it in the chats, drop it in the comment. And, you know, we're all looking to get our children supported, have our families supported, and get back into school, because that's what we really all want for our students. And that's what I've heard here. I'm really happy for all of the great experiences some of these students have had. And I really am very sorry to hear about the challenges. But all of our voices, your voice and your voice and your voice and your voice, and all of your voices out there are necessary to affect change. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our kids back in school. So speak up. We want to hear your voice. Speak up. Any final words before we go about what you're looking forward to, like super short, what you're looking forward to in the next week or two and finishing out the school year? No? Great. Well, then I've got a quote that I'm going to end with, because you know I'm never at a loss of words. Thank you all for being here and for sharing your stories. They're all necessary in moving the needle and getting our students, and that's what's most important, back in school and back on track. Before we go, there was one final comment about the superintendent stepping down that I would like to share with you. And then again, drop yours in the chats and comments. I am hopeful. I love the word hope. I am hopeful that we will have a fresh start with the new superintendent moving forward. Buettner definitely had an arduous road throughout his leadership dealing with the strike and the pandemic. And I think he did a decent job, but I can't say I was impressed. I feel his leadership felt a bit detached from the top down and seemed to be guided by political agendas rather than the true needs of students and their families. For whatever reason, I don't know who wrote that. But if you go read, click on the link. It was Marini. Oh my gosh. I don't even have your name on here, but thank you. It was your quote. I'm so glad you were even here to say it was your quote.
There was more that kind of balanced it out, but that was what I wrote at the beginning. Yeah.
All of these quotes have been shortened for this program. They're much longer, they're more well thought out, but I just chunked them down to what I thought were good sound bites here, and that can expand upon. So go read it. It's very well done. The parents have stated their voices. They say what they want, what they're pleased with, what they're displeased with. This is a big job of the superintendent. So whoever comes on next, it's not just the superintendent's job. It's the job of the families to get their voices heard, to advocate for what they need. It's the job of the board members of the districts. And so make sure you're voting, make sure your voice is heard, make sure you're advocating and standing up for your child. And until next time, bye everyone. Speak up. Thank you.